So today's report covers a relatively unknown and particularly unusual psychedelic that is actually of the amphetamine class, and it's known as DOB or 4-bromo-2,5-dimethoxyamphetamine. And as you'll see, the user of this certain chemical has a particularly nasty experience, and although it's not an exclusively negative chemical, there are obviously people that have positive experiences from it. It does seem to be pretty chaotic in nature. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this one. It's pretty freaky. This trip report is not to scare people off using DOB, but serves to demonstrate the possible dangers of redosing before truly identifying a substance and the need for a trip sitter. I was given 2 tabs of DOB at an unknown strength, under the impression that it was LSD, and this led to an overdose resulting in a coma. Rhabdomyolysis, which is a condition where the skeletal muscle breaks down, and symptoms include muscle pains and weakness and vomiting, and there's also tea-coloured urine, which is a hallmark of it, as well as cuts, bruises and physical scarring. My experiences with psychedelic drugs prior to this trip include 5-MeO-DMT, DMT, ayahuasca, mescaline, MXE, ketamine, Alad, Salvia divinorum, LSD, LSA, 2CB, 25-M-bomb, with LSD having been well taken over 50 times, often in high doses of 1 milligram. Note: parts of this experience had to be re-remembered post-trip during the weeks of recovery that followed, and as such, will feature at the end of my report narrated in the style in which I experienced them. The trip. 10 o'clock Sunday. It was a warm, sunny Sunday morning, and the fallout from a friend's party the night before. I hadn't slept, having consumed amphetamine and MDMA at the party, and when Kay woke up, we both decided that it would be nice to buy some acid and go to the park. Given the sunny weather, it would be a nice way to wind down the weekend. So we left Kay's flat to buy the acid that a friend had for sale. 11 o'clock. Having met Kay's friend and bought the tabs, he decided to join us in going to the park, picking up his friend on the way. I took my first tab at 11 AM, holding it under my tongue until it turned to mush. In my sleepless, joyful state, I thought nothing of the metallic taste, reminiscent of a 25-M-bomb tab. After 2 hours having consumed 3 to 4 beers in the park, and having felt only a subtle change in headspace, similar to a LSA or a low dose of LSD, I decided to take a second tab. Within half an hour of taking this, the effects really started to kick in, and it was apparent that these were not weak tabs by any means. My stomach became taut, muscles tightened and body engulfed in an all-over tingling. My visual field awash with bright aqua and turquoise patterns, and thoughts a shifting paradigm between unabated arrogance and childlike confusion. This energy, euphoria and childlike excitement was bliss. 2 o'clock Sunday. We eventually decided to leave the park. The heat had become too much to bear, and as we left I felt a rush of excitement in simply deciding what rubbish we should put in the bin, and what was simply not our responsibility, such as chewing gum, tissue, plastic straws, etc., that had already been there. These feelings took me back to my first trip on LSA, and feeling the most intense excitement at the thought of tidying up. After leaving the park, Kay wanted to head back to her flat. I didn't particularly want to go, but joined her regardless. The walk there seemed to take forever in the blistering heat, and was extremely exhausting physically. By the time we reached her flat, I was literally dripping with sweat. My white t-shirt saturated, and the visuals had intensified to where I could hardly see anything in front of me. They've taken on a static-like quality similar to the visual distortion from standing up too fast and getting a head rush. The details in Kay's face have become prickled with the heat, objects on the floor reduced to indiscernible static. As I look out the back of Kay's second floor, I become mesmerised by the large overgrown tree that takes on a jungle-like quality in the heat and sun. My vision of the tree begins to slice, as the sound of crickets and the tree's deeply saturated leaves stir up feeling of nature and exploration. My visual haze fades and a wall of calm falls over me as I observe the difference between the hot jungle out there and the cool tranquility in the flat. With the tranquility and coolness, my ego falls away. My cockiness, excitement and egotism replaced with quiet, introverted thoughts and a willingness to simply observe. Social interaction becomes an alien concept as I turn inwards on myself. Subtle paranoia about having to converse with Kay creeps in. Conversations seem only to be a tool for others to impose their power and will on you, and in this state I am ill-equipped for any power struggle or conversation. 5 o'clock on Sunday. 2 hours later and I'm in a flat downstairs from Kay's with 2 friends. Kay has left to go to the pub down the road while it's still sunny. It's around 5 PM at this point. An awkward situation had arisen that led me to being in this flat. Kay had invited a friend over who insisted that we go and visit my friends in the flat downstairs, who she also knew. She did this by banging on the doors and windows to their flat in a very aggressive manner until she was let in. Whilst I had not been banging on the doors and windows, I felt guilty by proxy, and could see that my 2 friends clearly wanted to be left alone. All while this was happening, my trip was becoming more intense. At points I felt like reality was a grand play all being performed for me. I was sitting on a sofa bemused at the hostilities and arguments taking place before me, the only audience member in a cosmic play of my design. The flat was the only universe that I knew, and anything outside of it no longer existed in my mind. At this point I knew I was beyond functioning. My memories of what followed become fragmented and blotchy. Intensive care unit, hospital, at 12 o'clock on Monday. I woke up in an ICU hospital bed with a kind-looking chubby man at the end of it staring at a monitor. Coming out of both of my arms are tubes, 2 in my left and 2 in my right, 2 at the crook and 2 near the thumb. There is a tube also attached to my face near my nose. I notice a catheter coming out of my penis and instinctively try to remove it. The man insists I don't do this and removes it for me. I'm quite bemused by the situation, not understanding the severity of what has happened or how I arrived there. I am also still seeing the visual effects of the drug. Posters on the wall near my bed fold up in a crumpled paper effect, and there is a cold hazy blue glistening effect to the air. I look at the clock on the wall. I should be in work. Not understanding the trauma my body's been through, the fact that I was in a coma on a breathing machine, I insist on being discharged, and whilst trying to get out of bed, I notice cuts and bruises on my legs. I struggle to get to the edge of the bed and sit there when I realise that I can't walk. My body aches all over and feels as heavy as lead. A doctor comes by and explains that it's not advisable I leave. I could suffer kidney failure and be on dialysis for the rest of my life if I leave now. My blood creatine levels were way above normal at 54,200. On this advice, I decided to stay. I was transferred out of the ICU that day and stayed in hospital for a further 4 days before being discharged. The trip re-remembered, disconnect with reality. This happened at 6 o'clock on Sunday. I'm in the second flat. The atmosphere is calmer now that Kay and her friend have left. I peer through the blinds to see outside, but I can't see the outside world, just dull coloured blocks making a wall where the window used to be. They're painted like the inside of a stick of rock, dull purples and oranges. This room isn't real. It's a matrix, fake area put together for me, so they can steal my bank details without me realising. A fake room to keep me entertained. I look at the bank card. I can't read any of the digits or text. Is it my bank card or Oyster card I'm looking at? The whole card is pulsing with neon light and energy, covering all the text. I pace the flat in a state of great agitation. All the rooms in this flat look the same. As I pass through the hall, there are people sitting on the wall like gargoyles, loitering. I don't recognise them. The frames of the doors are now glowing neon and the air has taken on a thickness. Moving from one room to another is like looking at a mirror facing another mirror. Infinite repetitions. I keep on going to leave, going room to room, in a state of turmoil. I don't know what to do. As I leave through the front door of the flat, my friends call me back. I keep on thinking I have to leave, but my friends keep calling me back. The fact I haven't left is the common denominator. That's why nothing changes. What needs to change? I get out the flat and into the main hallway. I have been here a few times before and always push the front door to get out. I pull this time on the door to open to the world. Exposure. It's still blindingly bright outside. I see a man walk by me with a dog. Do I know him? Is that B? No, the man replies with a grin on his face. His voice sounds muffled and distant, as does mine. I say something else, but can't tell what I've said as it sounds too obscure. I don't know B, he says. He seems to find it funny that I've asked him such a strange question. The sun has begun to set, and as I walk through the rows of terraced houses, I'm a cop, head of a futuristic police force, starring on a TV show. I'm rehearsing my lines for a big bust that will be televised, about to do a bust on one of those properties. I'm in contact with another officer who is in the ether, who is also me. I have clearly disconnected with reality, not aware anymore of where I am, present dangers, talking out loud to myself. My sci-fi daydream has bled into reality and replaced it, depersonalised and delirious. I feel the presence of something vicious coming for me, being passed from one dimension to another like a hot potato, coming my way. Nobody had ever had to deal with something as horrifying as this. Before it happened it was unfathomable, unthinkable, had never happened. It was as if I was going to be assaulted, for the first time in history, in a world where there was no physics. I was going to be the first of my kind, bludgeoned to death by a crazed hammer-wielding homeless man. A black grid overlays itself in the sky in front of me, and coming towards me through the grid is this monster, constructed in black wire, unfathomable in strength, ripping in two, sheer terror. It's a behemoth, heading towards me with pure anger, and it's going to tear me in half. It breaks free of the grid, twisting up outside of it, breaking free. Times 1 quintillion stronger than any force and heading for me. I could see in my mind a person being ripped apart from the inside by a black kitten-like creature constructed of wire that spread around its insides like liquid fire. I can hear and feel this, thick yellow pus bubbling and terrified screams, possibly my own, as the demon kitten tears up the human's insides. This pain was of a ripping, tearing nature, and maybe when I cut my left hand. I'm now the front of someone's garden, walking down some concrete step towards a house. I lose my balance multiple times but don't fall. I look at my watch for some reason as I plunge. The grass is so overgrown that I cannot see my footing, and as I look up at the sky, it has grown dark as a grass visual jungle motif reaches up to the greying clouds. My vision is getting darker. Fade to black. A total closed-eye visual world comprised of complex black line grid geometries. A universe comprised of mathematical grids and dread. I hear the bleeps, police codes being said over this dark universe. Code 1-6. These sounds echo through the darkness. Hello? Name. Can you hear me? Surname. Echoing off into infinity. Beep. We're here to help you. Name. Hello, name. Can you hear me? Beep. We're here to help you, name. I can see all these creatures resembling triangular mice in the darkness clinging to the grids. A vague dull light glints across the triangle offspring critters and disturb them as they sit on the grid. I assume this was a light being shined across my eyes by medical professionals on scene. There are 12 families of Beelzebub coding and recorded every vile mental abuse in this world. Incest, physical pain, abuse, self-hatred and torment, documenting every form, every corner of its domain. All these bleeps, voices, so distant in space, echo and overlay, fading past the grids. They fade with the beings, the offspring, their billionaire overlords and their district police. There is hierarchy in this world. The divide between the overlords and lackeys tremendous. It's all mathematics and grids in this universe, and I hear hundreds of chirping voices talking about killing and abuse, firing off from every angle of my mind. This is hell. Grids upon grids of the darkest parts of the human mind. This event tore me up physically and mentally. Remembering what happened still brings up feelings of dread and terror even 9 months on. The message to take away from this is that always be aware of what you're taking, and if it's a choice between underdosing and overdosing, you can always redose later. What I put my loved ones through is regrettable and not a mistake I want to make twice. Submitted by Crypto TOR.